Hello and welcome to the Vaults of Terra. My name is Ed and today we will be continuing with our overview videos with a quick look at the Titans of the Imperium along with the knightly orders of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Now, the Titans are the more renowned of the two, and that is what we will start with. The Imperial Titans are known as the colossal god machines of the Adeptus Mechanicus Collegia Titanica. The Titans are mechanical and bipedal, who can be up to 100 feet in height and look vaguely man-shaped, and are completely geared towards war. They are terrifying on the battlefield, and can only be opposed by other Titans, or whole armies dedicated to killing just one Titan. They are controlled by human pilots, usually located in a cockpit in a Titan's head, and control the vast machinery through the Mind Impulse Units, or MIUs, which are basically controlling the Titan through the power of thought. They are powered by plasma generators akin to the generators on starships, and use void shields like those used by starships for protection, combined with incredibly thick armour for if the shield is overloaded or inoperable. Now, the limbs of a Titan use electrically motivated fibre bundles that form synthetic muscles, much like the fibre bundles in Space Marine power armour, although far larger and more powerful. Now, the Titans are controlled by the Collegia Titanica, which is a division of the Adeptus Mechanicus responsible for these god machines. It is sometimes called the Adeptus Titanicus, a contraction of its full name, the Adeptus Mechanicus Collegia Titanica. Now, the Collegia Titanica was formed before the union of Mars and Terra, whilst Mars was still gathering up its technology and sending out forge ships through the warp storms in the Age of Strife. After the Treaty of Olympus, where Mars joined the Imperium, the Titans joined the Astartes legions and the Imperial army to help conquer the galaxy. Some of the worlds conquered became forge worlds and the new homes for the Titan legions. Part of the Collegia turned against the Imperium during the Horus Heresy, but after their defeat on Holy Terra, were driven back into the Eye of Terror, where they continue to fight from today. The Collegia is organised into 4 divisions: the Divisio Mandati, the Divisio Telepathica, the Divisio Investigatus, and the Divisio Militaris, which actually includes the Titans which are used in combat. The Divisios are further divided into legions or orders. Each legion is a self-contained unit headed by a Grand Master. Now, the Divisio Militaris is the main military force of the Collegia, also known as the Order or the Legion of the Divisio Militaris, or more simply, the military orders. They're each self-contained units, each containing their own princeps and moderati, ground combat troops, and support staff. Each legion is usually based on a forge world, and most forge worlds have one, or in some cases several, Titan legions. Now, the legion's strength is typically around 50 operational engines, which is another name for a Titan. Battle losses can take centuries to replace, as construction of new Titans is a long and labour-heavy process. Now, today the Warlord is the most common class of Titan seen on the battlefield, whilst the Imperator Titan is incredibly rare but also incredibly powerful, and so it's maybe not used as much, so it can be preserved for the future. Next up, the Divisio Mandati, also known as the Executive Orders, are the Titan orders that travel in vast temple spacecraft and are responsible for bringing the Pax Imperia, the peace of the Imperium, to independent human worlds who have not yet joined the Imperium. Each temple ship carries a small number of Emperor-class Titans. Now, each Emperor is its own self-contained unit, carrying members of the Adeptus Arbites, the Inquisition, and the Adeptus Terra. It is through a combination of persuasion and this vast firepower that many worlds are brought into the fold of the Imperium. Now, the Divisio Telepathica is responsible for the dreaded and unusual Psi Titans. Its orders are the Telepath Orders, and are said to operate from a secret forge world near the heart of the Imperium, although nobody knows where that is. Now, finally, the Divisio Investigatus is actually the Divisio in charge of constructing all of the Titans for the Orders, and also engineering and testing that technology, which is where the Investigatus part of their name comes from. All of the Investigatus Orders are actually based on Mars, the capital forge world, to prevent any of these technological secrets from being stolen by others, although, of course, it has happened in the past. Now, moving on to the Titans and their crew, Titans have various types depending on their battlefield function, and stand between 40 and 80 feet in height. Each type will also have various classes and variants determined by the weapon it carries. For the crew, each crew consists of a single princeps that commands the Titan, assisted by a moderati, a tactical officer, a chief engineer, an engineering crew, and servitors, with the number of each depending on the type of Titan. Now, as mentioned, the Princeps uses a Mind Impulse Unit, or MIU, to communicate with the Titan's machine spirit, which is one of the largest types of single spirit in existence, controlling its operation with his thoughts and feeling its movements like his own. The link will grow strong enough that one day, the usually strong-willed Princeps will have his mind actually broken by the strength of the Titan he commands, and he will become unfocused or ill when not linked to the engine. He will usually be focused on moving the Titan in combat whilst the weapons officers power the weapon limbs, but can take direct control of the whole machine if needed. Sometimes the link grows so strong, especially in the most ancient of Titans, that in order to continue, the Princeps actually becomes physically linked and locked into the Titan to serve until their death. Now, moving on from the Titans, I want to talk about something else, which is quite recent in the Warhammer 40,000 lore, and that are the Knights. Now, the Knights are smaller and less powerful one-man Titan vehicles, who operate on the same principles at a much smaller scale, only usually mounting one Titan-class weapon. The Knights themselves are operated from the knightly houses located on Night Worlds. A little bit of background to this, the Night Worlds were formed from explorator fleets sent before the end of the Age of Strife. They arrived on feudal worlds with rich resources and formed enclaves there, taking resources from the world in return for a portion of the Mechanicus' technology, including the Knights. Smaller than a Titan, but more suitable to the highly mobile form of combat that a Titan had too much mass to commit to on these rather technologically backward worlds. When the Imperium was founded, these Night Worlds became outposts for nearby Forge Worlds. In the current age of the Imperium, the Knights can be called upon by the Titan legions as reserves when required, and each knight is piloted by a noble of the Night Worlds, which maintain the noble societies 10,000 years on from their discovery by the Forge Worlds. Now, Night Worlds operate under a rigid feudal system. A subclass called the Drovers look after the animal herds and use walkers similar to that of their masters, but by law are not armed with any weapons, forcing the Drovers to rely on the Knights for protection. In addition to the Knight war machines, every house has multiple men-at-arms in its employ, resembling the planetary defence forces, although not quite as well armed. On several worlds, artificers and technicians become the most important subjects of the warrior nobility, who maintain the Night Walkers, styling themselves as priests called the Scaristans. They also arbitrate between the knightly houses, using ritualized versions of the values of duty, honour and valour to settle disputes. With the acceptance of these values, the knights become known as the chivalry, and their armour is passed down from parent to child in a hereditary fashion, owing allegiance to their house and to their world, and vowing to protect it and honour their agreement with the Mechanicus and the Collegia from ages past. Some knights do not actually owe allegiance to any house, and instead wander the galaxy as free-blade knights. Now, finally I want to talk about the knight armour before I finish today's video. Knightly armour comes in many different varieties, the most common types of knight being the knight paladin and a knight errant, using the same basic body but fitted with different weapons. All Imperial knights are protected by a thick adamantine armour and field generators called ion shields. I will now go through an example of some knightly armours, although many more may exist as variants within the Imperium. The first up is the knight paladin, the atypical knight armed with a large caliber battle cannon and a giant chainsword. Next up is the Knight Errant. Highly suited to attacking larger targets, they carry thermal cannons capable of easily vaporizing steel or flesh. Then is the Knight Lancer, which is a faster version of the Knight. It uses its speed to outflank the enemy and scouts their defensive positions. The Lancer is armed with a battle cannon and a power lance for close combat. Next up is the Knight Castigator, a form of knight designed to take down hordes of lesser enemies with its Castigator bolt cannon. Next is the Knight Archon, designed to engage foes at close range with heavy flamethrowers and chainswords. Then there's the Knight Magaria, which is designed as a shock assault troop, and the Knight Strix, which is designed for wanton slaughter, although why anyone would want to try and do that in a giant war machine is beyond me, clearly. Next up are the heavier classes of knight, the Knight Crusader, which is made on Forge Worlds along with the Knight Castellan. Although slower and less nimble, they have increased firepower in the form of las cannons, quake cannons and heavy bolters, along with far increased armour to protect it. Then there's also the Knight Castellan, related to the Knight Crusader, but replaces its las cannon with a multi-barreled autocannon, giving it far better firepower against an enemy infantry and light vehicles. The final knight is the Knight Baron, which is the leader of a contingent of knights. As a sign of status, every baron has a customised knight suit. Most barons' suits are armed with power lances and rapid-fire battle cannons. So that's everything I wanted to talk to you today about the Titans and the Imperial Knights. However, This is not the last video I'm going to be doing on these, as there's so much more I need to mention about the Titans themselves and the different classes that I will be doing another video next time, which is focused purely on the Titans and their classes, and maybe, if people want it, a little bit more about the Knights as well. I hope that's everything you wanted to see today. If you have a suggestion or a request, please leave it in the comment section below or contact me via personal message. If you want to go and talk about some Warhammer 40,000 lore in an interesting setting, you can go over to the Vox Relay, which is linked in the description below, and talk to the very wonderful people there who are interested in the Warhammer 40,000 lore. So that's everything I needed to say today. See you next time on the Vaults of Terra.